So the very first reason for going with the jQuery library is in order to simplify the DOM operations. Okay, so the main intention of going with the jQuery library is in order to simplify the DOM operations. So what do you mean by DOM operations? You know that, right? Using your DHTML content, we could able to create the elements, we could able to delete the elements, we could able to update, edit, delete, what or not. Lot of things can be done using your JavaScript DHTML methods. But now jQuery, what it is providing is, if at all you use the basic JavaScript code in order to do some changes to the existing element, you will be going through lot of steps. Instead of that, you use my predefined methods. I will be doing all the minimum required things and I will be solving the things for you. You just need to call my method. Let's take a practical example, guys. Okay, let me show you a simple example. Say, for example, I say jQuery demo.html. One second, guys. Okay, let me see. Okay, let us say I have a simple predefined tag which is having some ID, content. Okay, I say hello everyone, some simple message, some script over here. I say some input type equal to say some button, value is equal to apply. On click is equal to apply changes. Okay. Now I go with var so and so. Like this. Okay. Let us define some classes here. Um, okay. So this is a very simple message what I have. My requirement is whenever user clicks on this, okay, before click on this apply, I would like to apply this class to this guy. Say some class equal to so and so. Come back here and reload the page. This is how I have. Whenever I click on apply, I want to add another class, highlight. Okay. I want to say font size of some 30 pixel, say some background color of something called as green. Okay, save this guy. My requirement is now if I apply this highlight class on load of the page, this is how it is visible, isn't it? But my requirement is I don't want to apply the highlight on load of the page. Okay, but when the user clicks on this apply, then I want to add this class. Can you guys tell me, is it is possible using your DHTML methods? Yes or no? Can it be done by JavaScript?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we have already seen those methods. Now let us say that I would like to say whenever user says apply changes, I would like to say document dot query selector hash hash content dot add dot set attribute, say some class, and the value is highlight. Yes or no? Any questions on this? I'm finding the element having ID called as content. For that guy, I'm actually applying a class called as highlight. Okay, just give me a second. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Okay, so hope everybody is clear with this line number 29. Have you understood this?
Yes, sir. You spelled highlight differently on the different ones.
Is it so? Where actually, okay, this is the change which. Okay, fine. Yeah, this is how we have added. Okay, so now if you save this guy, come back here, reload the page. Now, when I click on apply, yes, the background color is applying, the font size is also getting applied. But the problem what you have is, what about the previous width and border part? If you inspect these guy, okay, you see there is a div having an ID called as content class as so-and-so. Okay, reload the page. By default, it is having a class called as container. Whenever I say apply, what it is actually doing, is it not replacing the existing class with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. But that is not my expectation. My expectation is I would like to add a class to an existing class. Okay. So for that, what actually I need to do is I need to write some piece of code. Let us get the existing class where existing class is equal to document dot query selector so and so dot get attribute class. Okay, you got the existing class. Now what you do, where new classes is equal to existing class plus this highlight class. Okay. Now you take out this new classes. Now you apply to this. Any questions on this 3 lines of statements? Simple. Any questions? What I'm doing is, before adding a new class, I'm taking the old class, adding the new class to this. Now I'm applying to this. Because what the set attribute is doing, it is replacing the existing class attribute. So now I'm doing this. Now if you save this guy, come back here and reload the page. Now once I click on apply, see my existing class container is also there, highlight is also there. Any questions on this? Anyone?
Sir, inside the get attribute, why you have taken class?
Because first of all, I want to get the existing class, right? Now, how do you get this value dynamically?
Okay,
Now I
sir.
can say simply like this also I can do this. I can simply say container like this. Both are same. But my expectation is, now in that case, you don't even need to put the 29. But my expectation is dynamically whatever the class it is having, that I want to get it, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Next,
sir.
any other questions?
Sir, this is very
What
similar
if
to append, isn't it? Well, basically you're appending, the changes that you've made, the next for the font sizes and whatnot.
Yes, I'm appending a class to an existing class. That's it.
Okay.
Any more questions?
sir,
Doesn't
sir,
give
what if we have multiple class on a div? What if we have multiple div and multiple class on it?
That's what, right? When you say
Oh,
document.
that is why we put the ID. That is why we put the ID. Okay.
Yes. So when we take document.getAttribute class, it is having right now single class, but whatever the classes you have, that will come into this existing class. Now you're simply adding a new class. No changes. Okay. Now, if you see here in this line, 3 lines of statements, have you really done any business logic here? No. Business logic means actual logic of the application. Have you done anything like that? No. What actually you have done was simply adding a new class to an existing element. This is a simple DOM operation. Now what I say is, just for a simple adding a new class to an existing element, you have written 3 lines of statements which are unnecessarily. Those are like normal, which is a very common requirement in any of the application. So if I have to do lot of DOM operations in an application, hell lot of coding you have to write. Yes, being a developer, you have to write hell lot of coding. That is where jQuery has come into the picture. What jQuery is saying is, anytime you want to work with, anytime you want to work with any of the DOM operations, you generally have to use some basic JavaScript code. To avoid that, you just make use of the jQuery API, which will help you in reusing, in defining some predefined methods. Using this, you can actually simplify the DOM operations. Let's take a practical example, guys. There is an application where we are reading data of the student. Say something called as, there are something called as some 300 fields are there. Okay, there are, guys, assume there is no realistic, but virtually you just think of, imagine there is an application where a user is entering 300 fields, name, age, gender, etc., a lot of things are doing. He simply clicks on submit button. Okay, now you need to read all the data and you need to send the data to the server. Okay, and whatever the response you get, show it back to the user. This is the very simple thing you need to do. Okay. 1 second, guys. Yeah. So once you read all the data from the user, you need to send the data to the server. Server will be responding back and you need to show the message back to the user. Assume 100% of coding is done for this. Okay, 100% you have already written the coding. Super fine. Now, among this 100%, can I say that 80% of the code is related to DOM operations? Yes or no? Agree or not? DOM operations in the sense, I need to write a piece of code. Document.getElement by ID username, get the value. Document.get implies anything what you're working with the DOM, reading, writing, anything you do, but it's a DOM operations. Agree
Yes,
or
sir. Yes, sir.
80% of the
Yes,
code is
sir.
related to the DOM operations? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Example number 1. Example number 2. In an Amazon application, you are searching for products. Okay, I search for laptops. When the server is responding back to you, it is responding like a JSON object or array of objects, saying that array of product 1, product 2, product 3. Now I need to show the data on the UI, implies I need to write some DHTML coding for this. Create UL tag, provide LL tag, provide create a div tag, under that set the values, inner HTML, inner text, set the classes, etc. and all. Again, if we have 100% of the coding, 90% of the coding is DHTML coding. Yes or no? Yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
you go for any of the applications where you have, I mean, everywhere you have the DHTML coding. Dynamically, you have to update the UI. You need to dynamically set the changes on the UI. So in that case, we have to make use of the JavaScript DHTML methods. So when we go with the JavaScript DHTML methods like this, we are unnecessarily wasting a lot of time in both size of the file and unnecessary logics. So how do I avoid this? Now what jQuery is saying is very simple. Use my jQuery API to solve all the DOM operation questions. Okay. Example, how do you go with the jQuery? So you simply go with jQuery.com/download. Earlier, I have already shown you, right? Whenever you want to make use of a JavaScript library, very simple. Include that library in your file. That's it, more than enough. Now I go for this guy, copy this jQuery. He has given that jQuery 3.6 is the latest version. This is the URL boss. Okay, take this URL, come back to the application. You simply say script script src is equal to so and so. That's it. Including an external JS file into your current file is equal to using the jQuery API. No installations, nothing. Just including the external file into your current system. Now, if you save this guy, okay, now what I'm saying is, in order to do this job, this is the piece of 3 lines of code what we have written. Okay, what I say is $of $content dot add class. What was that? Highlight. That's it, guys. Now, if you come back here, reload the page. When I click on apply, is happening? Yes. Now you tell me, have you written any huge number of coding? No, boss. Just simply I'm using a predefined method called as add class. Who is giving that? Who has written that piece of code? jQuery has already defined it. You as a and the user simply make use of that method and get the advantage of it. This is what jQuery is. It is only providing the options or methods using which DOM operations can be simplified. You say, boss, using jQuery, I want to find the sum of 2 numbers. No, boss. Using jQuery, you want to do some business logic. No, boss. Using jQuery, it is having hell lot of methods. Lot of methods are there. Add class, remove class, alt tag. Lot of methods are there. If you go through the notes, you can find them. So all those methods are responsible for doing only the DOM operations. Just to simplify the DOM operations, jQuery has been helping us. Okay. If you even go with the documentation, here, there are lots and lots of methods, guys. See here, add method. What do you mean by this? You want to add a new DOM element. Add back implies adding a new element to at the back of an existing element. Add a new class after the element you appended. So any method you go with the jQuery, every method is capable of doing some DOM operation. Now, if you ask me a question, boss, you are simply saying like add class. Is jQuery doing any magic here? No, boss. At the background, jQuery is doing all the DOM methods only, basic DOM operation. That is what jQuery is doing. But being a developer, you don't need to concentrate on what are the background steps here. You simply need to see just how do you call this method, how that is getting applied. As simple as this. Did you understood why actually we are going for jQuery?
Yeah, it simplifies stuff and it kind of makes things quicker. Yeah.
Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Sir, what is mean by dollar, sir?
Okay, I will tell you. I will tell you what is dollar, why, what is this add class method, etc. and all. But I just want to show you that I use some jQuery here. That's it. Using jQuery, I could able to solve it. Are you clear with that or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, nice.
But you comment all programs, how it is execute, sir?
Sorry, what your question? Could you repeat again?
So you can comment all code. So how it executes, sir?
So for us, like this is what I did, right? This is a JavaScript code, what I have written. I have commented it. The same thing, I could able to do that using the jQuery. And this is what a jQuery line I do. Using jQuery, I'm doing this. Earlier, we are doing with 3 lines of code. Now I'm doing with just a single line of code, which is jQuery methods. Now, being a developer, you are getting advantage, right? Being a developer, you don't need to write all the hell lot of code. You simply use simple methods, job is done for you. Clear?
Okay.
Yeah. Fine.
Sir,
Now, yes, go ahead.
sorry, sir. I missed the lesson where you introduced jQuery. Could you just let me know which? I mean, was it the previous lesson?
No. In fact, this is the very first class I'm talking about the jQuery.
Okay.
I haven't talked anything about what is jQuery. I haven't talked about what is dollar, etc. I'm simply showing that I want to show you with a practical example that what is jQuery. You just need to know that earlier we are writing 3 lines of code. Now I'm writing single line of code. Now you got the advantage by the reason I'm going for jQuery. That's it. How to use, how to start making use of it, what is minified, etc. I'm still have to discuss.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. So now what I'm saying is, okay, now when you go with the jQuery, as I said, anytime you go with any of the libraries, you just need to make use of the external JS file. That JS file has to be included in your application, and that's it. Your library will be working. When you go to the jQuery, it is going to provide 2 files for you. Okay, not only jQuery, when you go for any of the external libraries, it is saying that this is a compressed file and this is a non-compressed file. Okay, so this is non-compressed file. This is a compressed file. Okay, the first thing is, why the reason these 2 files are there and what actually these 2 files are. The first thing is, whenever you go with any of the application, let us say, okay, let me go with the math operations, guys. Let me have a copy of this guy. Control, paste this guy, save this guy. Okay, I go to November 22nd. Math util.js. Okay, this is the external library. Earlier we have already created, right? Now, you know that whenever you are creating the libraries, it is recommended that you need to put some documentation, because when you are done with the library, when you share the library with others, they might go through the library and they may want to get extra information from the library. Okay. Now, what we have to do, we have to put some extra documentation saying that method to do addition. Okay. In the same way, this is the P1. P1 is of type number, and this is after. This is a comment, guys. If you say that if I don't add, what is going to happen? Nothing. It still will work. But only thing is, it just adds an extra information. Return result. Okay, that's it. This is an extra information what we have added. At the same time, we can even put something called as add logic. So the reason why we are putting the documentation is, this is called as documentation, adding some extra comment and extra information, so that anyone who looks into the code, they can directly understand. They don't need to get back to you and ask for why the reason you have actually added this piece of code. No need, because you have already added the required comments. Everyone can understand this. So this is for division. So whenever you write any piece of coding, right, it is recommended that you put the documentation. Multiply. Okay. So let me remove this guy. Okay, super fine. Now, if you save this guy, this is what I have here. Now, I save this guy. I go to my file, public, go to the November 22nd, math-util properties. Okay, if you see here, is it not taking 4096 bytes of size? Yes. Now, whenever you are loading this JS file into the browser, when it is getting executed within the browser, you tell me, does the browser need any type of extra documentation to understand the method?
No, sir.
No.
No,
In
sir.
the same way, wherever you have this P1 and P2, instead of just P1 and P2, I may say something called as, this is first value, replace all. This is second value. Okay. Again, I'm adding a self-descriptive variable names so that it gets understandable by the user more clearly. Because if I simply say P1, P2, you don't have any extra information. If I say that first value, second value, he understands that, okay, this is first value, second value. So you're writing some self-descriptive methods, self-descriptive variable names. You're adding some extra documentation. You are adding some line breaks wherever you wanted, enough spaces, etc. and all. But do you really think browser needed all this? No, this is all for the developer purpose. For if the other developer comes into the same application, in order to get him understandable, we are adding all this extra info. Now, how do we make the, how do you make the developer to understand? We are doing this. But coming to the browser only sees two things. Okay, how much file size you're giving, whether that is syntax free, syntax error free or not. That's it. I'll go with execution. Now, what I'm saying is, if you are adding this extra documentation, aren't you not increasing the performance? Aren't you not increasing the size of the page? 4000 plus bytes of the space you're occupying in the memory. Now, when I give 10 bytes of content, when I give 4000 bytes of content, you tell me which one will take lesser time to process?
10
Obviously, the 10 bytes. So the lesser the size file content you give to the browser, the faster it is going to respond back to you. The lesser the file size you give to the browser, the faster it is going to throw the result back to you. If you really want to increase the performance of the page, the size of the file content has to be given to the browser as a lesser one. Now, boss, now I'm not saying that you have to remove all the logic. What I'm saying is, when you're giving to the browser, remove the things what actually it is not needed. This is what the concept we say something called as minification. Minification is the concept of remove unnecessary spaces from the content, remove unnecessary line breaks from the page, remove unnecessary or extra documentation, remove extra self-descriptive, what do you say? Self-descriptive variable name, okay, etc. So if we remove all this and decrease the size of the file, that is what we call it as minification process, which is always recommended in our applications. Okay, so how do you do this minification? Now, I asked this question, okay, how do you do this? Now, I will copy this guy. I will create a separate file, save this guy. I'll give the same name, just I will simply dot mini, I will say, just for indication. It is not mandatory. If you ask me a question, what if I don't give mini? It's not going to do much difference. It's almost like the same. The only thing is just to have a difference for us between the names. Okay. Now, what I will do in this mini, copy this content, paste this guy. Now, what I'm saying is, under this minified file, I will be removing all the extra documentation. Okay. Instead of this guy, I say A comma B. See here, I'm just simplifying the piece of code. Okay, count plus plus, this equal to %, right? I will say return You tell me, is there is any, is it is almost like the same what we have earlier written? Yes or no?
Almost, yeah, very similar.
Exactly the same. In
Yes.
fact, like don't even give the spaces also, no spaces. Earlier we are giving the spaces just for the user understanding purpose. See here, it's same as it is what we have written earlier. Is it not reducing the size here, guys? Same logic, same result, but you're reducing the size. The only problem what we have is end user, when he try to understand the code, he might not understand because there is no extra information. Forget about this. We are only talking about the browser perspective when it is running. So this is what we call it as minification. As a developer, anytime you write the piece of JavaScript code, it is always recommended that you have to make the piece of code to be minified. You have to minify the piece of code, then only you have to deploy that into the prod. You can start making use of. Okay, so without minification, your application is going to decrease the performance of the page. Okay, but now you may, and in this case, what we are doing now, we are maintaining two versions of the code. One is the non-minified version. If the user, any user says that, boss, I want to understand your API, then I can't give this mini guide. I will give you this guide so that he will understand each and every method. He will go for that. But when I'm going with the browser, when I'm executing this, you will go with this. But as a developer, you might have a problem here. Boss, is it not unnecessary or is it not painful job for us to maintain two versions of this? Because you go here, add a method, again come over here, define the method with all the minification part. Again, if you want to do the changes on the method, again you have to rewrite it. So unnecessarily repetitive job over here. To avoid this, you actually don't do the minification process manually. We never do the minification process manually. That day, I think in between I have shown you guys that there are a lot of minified or minifying tools are available outside in the market. Those are capable of taking your code, minify it, and simply throw back to you. Okay, example. So I will go for this mathapril.js. Now you go for Google, search for something called as minify.js. Okay, so once you go into the JS, like thousands of tools are available. I'm just going with the first one, JS minifier. What it asking? Give me the input JavaScript code. Okay, this is what we are writing. Now you come back here, paste the piece of code in this. You click on minify. See here, this is what the code, what you got. Now, if you go to the minifier, Control A, paste it. As simple as it is. View word wrap. Do you see? Is the logic has been changed here? No, logic is never ever changed. It's only minified. I mean, the documentation has been removed. Everything what we have done, the same thing has been done. The other advantage is now you go to the size of this file. Is it not 277 bytes? Earlier it was 1370 bytes. Implies, am I not saving 80% of the coding or the size? Am I not increasing the performance of the page by 80%? Because earlier it was taking some time in order to process 1300 bytes of content. Right now I'm taking only 200 bytes of content. Obviously I'll take less time. So this is what we call it as minification process. Not only the library code, any JavaScript code, whatever we write, it is recommended when we are deploying into the production, it has to be minified. Okay. From now, any JavaScript library you go for, everyone, you will observe this, that everyone will give you two versions here. One is the minified version, one is the non-minified version. So that is what jQuery guy also has given. Boss, if you are interested in understanding, now when you go with jQuery, you see this is the compressed version and this is non-compressed version. Now what he is saying, boss, if you are using the jQuery just to increase the performance of your page, you are not interested how jQuery methods are been given, etc. and all, simply go with this mini.js. If you are interested, you want to know how I have written the method, how I have written the logics and all. See here, for example, add class. I want to know how the add class method has been written. You come here, understand the piece of logic. It is self-descriptive, isn't it? But if you come over here, same application, now if you go for add class, job is going to be the same, but it is not so easy for you to understand. See here, function t e comma n comma n comma something. What is that? But here it is so descriptive. This is what the difference between the compressed and non-compressed is. Any questions up to this? Is everyone clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Clear.
Okay, great. Now, the next thing is, anytime you define a library. Now, as I said you, jQuery has defined this method called as add class method. Does it mean in my application, now here I have written this method. Now I go with a method called as var add class. Can't I do this? Because he has already defined, he has already made use of this method called as add class, right? Is it like I can't make use of it? Because even though you point out this external JS file, it comes to a single file when it is executing. So does it mean that I can't make use of this guy again? No, that is not the case. So can you tell me how jQuery would have been solved that? What jQuery is saying is, whatever the methods and variables I have used, you can again reuse the same. Then what jQuery would have done internally?
Closures.
Exactly. jQuery would have added all the piece of code within the closure. We already know that if the code is inside the closure, you cannot make use of the closure data outside directly. Whatever the methods or variables you have inside the closure can also be redefined outside the closure also. Okay, but one condition what you have is, anytime you want to access the closure data, or else let me show you. If you go to the jQuery, the very starting I see here, he has started with a closure. Everything is part of the closure, and he has given the name for the closure as two names here. He has given $, and he has given jQuery. Two names he has given, that's it. Okay, now if I say var a is equal, I say a is equal to b is equal to 90. Obviously, a and b both are having the same variable. Now, whatever the closure content he has given, he simply given two names here, $ and jQuery. So this is what you should not reuse. We already talked about this, right? If I say var $, or if I say var jQuery, that's it. You are gone. You cannot make use of the jQuery API. What jQuery is saying is, whenever you are using my library, only two restrictions, that you cannot reuse the variables like $ and jQuery, because I am already utilizing them. Remember, we already talked about this when I was talking about the closure. Anytime you make use of the closure, you will be given a restriction that closure name cannot be reused again and again. If you reuse the closure name, every data is gone. Okay, so anything what you want to access from the jQuery, you have to say $. Or jQuery . So example, if you want to access any of the DOM element, right? In general, what we say, document dot query selector, something called as hash ABC dot something. But if it is jQuery, you simply say $ of hash ABC. Simple. $ is equal to document here. Or else you can say J query of hash ABC. Both are same. Both are going to identify the same. If you want to make use jQuery, it's up to you. If you want to use $, it's up. Now on the top dot something, it's going to be the same. Any questions up to this?
Nope.
Done. Now, let us go back to our previous code, guys, where we were writing hell lot of DHTML coding. Let us see how you can minify that using your jQuery. Remember, guys, I have done the product details dynamically getting rendered. Do you remember when it was? App news, JS classes, November. We have added dynamic product data. This is the one. Open in default browser, load product data. Awesome. Who added this page animation? Okay. So when was that? It was November 9th. Dynamic product data. app and images product tab. Oh, let me see. App.js. App.json product app.css. Okay, product app.js and product app.css dynamic product data. Let's have a copy of this guy. Let's go into new folder DHTML_jQuery. Okay, I'm simply pasting this guy here. Now, if you run this guy from here, this is how it is. And I say load product data, this is how it is getting rendered. Now, you guys tell me how much DHTML coding have been written for this guy. If it is 100% of the coding to render the page, can I say that 90% of the code is all DHTML? Agree or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is the hard-coded data, fine. But if you see all this piece of code, everything is DHTML coding. Okay. Now, can I minify this coding using your jQuery? Yes, boss. Let us see that. Now, what I say is, I want to include the jQuery here. First of all, I say script src is equal to jQuery download. Sorry, it is compressor one. Copy this guy. I paste this. Okay. So one more thing is, don't directly make use of those web pages, guys. The problem what you see is when you directly make use of their URL. Right now you're using code.jquery.com. But if mistakenly their server is down, your code is getting affected. So instead of that, what you can do is copy this guy, copy the JavaScript code, create a new file, save this guy, make it as jQuery.js. Okay, make it outside, save this guy. Now what you do, come back to your application. When you want to include your jQuery, /jQuery.js. That's it. Now the advantage is even the code.jQuery.com web page is down, still doesn't affect you. You can still make use of it. Okay. Yeah. Coming to your application. Now I have first step is we have included the jQuery. Okay. Now you go to the app.js file. Come back here. See each and every line, guys. What all I'm doing. You tell me from line number 1 to line number 26. Any chance I can use jQuery here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Obviously, right? It is not needed because it's all hard government. It's all data hard coded. There is no DOM operations. You tell me, is there is any chance I can use jQuery from line number 29 to 54?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, yes, because you are using the DOM operations. Okay, first of all, you see line number 30. What I'm doing, create an element of li tag. Instead of this, you know what I can do? If it is jQuery, I can simply say $of li open and li close, as simple as it is. Instead of saying document.create element, etc. stuff here, you simply use the method called as $of li open and li close. That's it. Again, document or create element UL tag. You can simply say $of UL tag open and UL tag close. As simple as it is. UL tag dot set attribute. You are adding a class. In order to add a class, you have, one is set attribute. One option is you can simply say attr, or you can simply say add class. And what is the class name? You simply specify the class name. And one more thing, what jQuery says is, here what you're doing, creating a UL tag. In the next step, for the UL tag, add a class. What jQuery says is, why don't you do this? Create a UL tag. For that, immediately you add a class. That's it. Why you're unnecessarily wasting 2 lines of code? Okay. Again, at line number 33, document.create element. Can I simply say li open and li close? Yes. Now I can, instead of dot inner text, there is something called as dot text method. You simply put the text method, your job is done. And again, chaining mechanism, create an element, directly add a text. That's it. Okay, again, document.create element. Wherever you have create element, can I simply say this guy? Yes. Dot inner text. I can simply say doc text method here. Okay, simply like this. And again, chaining mechanism. Simply say this. Again, this guy dot text method and do this. In the same way, li tag, image tag, document.create element image tag. What I can say? Dollar of image tag open and image tag close. For the same image tag, you need to set the attr, dot attr. It is not set attribute. You simply say dot attr. Append. Again, document.query selector. Instead of this, you simply say dollar of so and so. My job is done. Have you minified the piece of code, boss? Yes. Save this guy, come back to your application, reload the page, load the product data. Nothing is coming. Why so? Inspect it, go for console. Dollar is not defined at line number 30. Why so? Because are we loading? Yeah, we are loading jQuery.js, right? What is the problem? Control U. Oh, we don't have the jQuery.js here. Am I doing the changes in a different page?
Sir, didn't you save it inside the main location rather than
No.
inside the folder?
Actually, I am doing the changes in the 9th folder, this guy, but that is not
Yeah.
the case. Here I need to do the change. November 22nd. DHT. So here I need to do the change. Save this guy, come back here and reload the page. I click on load product data. Uncaught reference error dollar is not defined. jQuery.js. It is saying jQuery.js is not defined. Why so?
It's inside the above folder, sir.
Exactly. So it should be dot. This is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now if we reload the page, when I click on load product data, see the data is coming. Super fine. The advantage is, do you see any type of UI changes, boss? No. jQuery is not working for any type of UI changes. jQuery is providing some predefined methods using which you can simplify the DOM operations. That is what I have done here. Okay, you can simplify the DOM operations here. I just minified. I mean, anywhere you want the piece of code, wherever there is a DOM operations, you can simply use it and you can minimize the piece of code, guys. This is why we go with the jQuery. Any questions here, guys?
Sir, there's a small difference. I wanted to know if it's an issue with actual
Yeah,
using jQuery or not. In the previous time, when we had the other page, when you hovered over those elements, they were grayed out. But this time around, they are not graying out when you hover over them.
Here it is happening, right?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I
That
didn't
is
see
it
that.
here. Yeah, it is there already. Yeah. Any more questions, guys? Anyone?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Everybody and one more. Now, if you ask me a question, boss, what do you mean by dot text method? What do you mean by this app method? I will talk about this. This is what you need to get expertise. I'm just simply showing that if it is jQuery code, how you are adding, how you are minifying the piece of code. That is what I have shown you. But later in the topics, I'm going to talk about what all are the other methods, what jQuery is supporting, what all are the predefined methods, and how more you can simplify, what animation effects, etc. things we'll be discussing on this. Okay. Now I come to this application. If I ask you a question, boss, is this application is 100% dynamic application? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is this application is 100% dynamic? Actually, no, right?
No, it's not.
50% it is dynamic.
No,
Yes,
good,
dynamically you are rendering the content on the page. But if you see the data, what you have, aren't we not still hard coding the data here? Yes. This is what it has to be avoided, guys. So we have to avoid this, making use of the hardcore data. Till now, most of the applications, whatever we are creating, we are always trying to hard code the data, which is never recommended in your applications. So how do I solve this? Instead of hard coding the data, we need to read the data from the server. You have to hit a server and you have to read the data. So let us go with the discussion, guys. Guys, the discussion, what I'm going to do right now, it is a very, very, very useful discussion. If you understand the discussion, then you will be very much clear about what is Ajax. Hope everybody know the importance of Ajax topic. It's a very, very useful. I'm not going to talk anything technical here. I'm not talking about the procedures here, but I'm going to discuss only the concept. And this concept, if you understand, this Ajax can be implemented in any technology. I'm not saying that only in JavaScript. How do you do? You can do it in JavaScript, you can do it in Java, you can do it in .NET. Anywhere you want, the concept is going to be the same. Okay? So please put some extra attention. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Now, I will tell you that there is a client application. This is what our client application is. Client in the sense, which is working within your browser, client-side code, which is executing within the client browser. Okay. In my client, I have already we have already shown the powerfulness of your JavaScript that you just only give me the data. I'm responsible for rendering the content. If you see the source code, nothing on the UI, nothing is hard coded. Dynamically through JavaScript, you could able to render the content on the UI. Super fine. But in order to render the content, what JavaScript is needed? JavaScript needed some data. You just need some data. Data has to be given. You guys tell me, in general, in a real-time application, where do you actually store the data? In an organized structure?
In the database.
Database. Awesome. So we will be going to one of the database. Okay, any of the database. So when I say database, it could be anything. So with Oracle, you can go with the Mongo. You can go with SQL server. A lot of databases are available. It's up to you. You can choose whatever you wanted. Okay. Now on the top. Okay. Now what I'm saying is, as JavaScript is capable of rendering the content, only thing is you want data. Why don't you directly create a request from client to the database? Okay, why don't you create a direct request from client to the database? So you put a request, you will be receiving the data. Okay, and these guy will return the data back to you. Now you have the communication. If I do this, is my job is done? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, super fine. Now, if this is the case, then there is no concept of server, guys. But the problem what you have is, you can never ever create a direct communication from any of the client to the database. You can never ever create a direct from communication from client to the database. Then what is the solution I have? You always need to take the mediator as a server guide. That is the reason we actually go to the server. There is no specific driver which is capable of making a communication between the client and DB due to the security issues. That is the reason we always do the communication from the server. Every server is capable of directly putting a request to the DB. Okay, it is capable of receiving a response from the DB. Any DB, I'm saying. You can go with Oracle, you can go with Mongo, SQL Server, Access, any database you go, every database server is capable of hitting. It is capable of getting a response from the DB. Okay, Now, when I say server, what type of servers? Lot of servers. You go with Java server, you go with Apache server, WebLogic server, lot of server, along with Node.js server also. Every server is capable of interacting with the DB. Now, what I say here, being a client guy, I cannot hit the DB. Now, what I do, being a client guy, I put a request to the server guy. When I put a request to the server guy, server internally creates a request to the database. He will get the data and he will be responding back to the client guy. Isn't it simple? Now you know, once the client receives the data, I know using my JavaScript, I can do all the UI part, etc. Yes, boss. No, once you come into the client guy, what technologies will fall under? We already covered this, but again, I'm showing this, guys. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery. Okay, when you go with Angular or you go with the React API, React.js or Vue.js, Cane.js. So there are lot of APIs, frameworks. Everyone is only responsible for creating a request from the client to the server. No one is responsible for directly hitting a database request. And when you go to the server, every server is capable. It could be a Java server, Apache, any server you go, every server is capable of interacting with the database. So we are indirectly using this. Indirectly, we put a request to the server. From the server, we will receive the data. Any questions on this? Anyone? And one more thing, guys, this is where you have the difference between the UI developer and the backend developer. Okay. Now, when I say this part, this first box, this is what we call it as a front-end developer. This second box is called as back-end developer. Okay. So when I say I'm a front-end developer, this is what you do, front-end developer. Okay, when I say that I'm a backend developer, this is backend developer. Now, you know what I mean by full stack developer? Anyone?
Both front end and back end.
Yes, both.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a developer who takes care of both the front end and back end. Now, right now, we are into the front end, guys. I haven't touched any type of topics which are related to the back end or DB, etc. You're still into the front end part. So being a front end guy, our responsibility is, do you work with the server or DB being a front end guy? No, your responsibility is only hitting to the server, getting the data. You are never ever bothered of how the data is being processed in the server, how the server is interacting with the DB. These things you are never ever bothered of. Okay, you are only bothered of putting a request to the server. Once you get a response, how do you process it? That is where you have handled. But remaining things will be taken care by the backend developer. But anyway, once in future, once you cover this Node.js, then you will discuss about the backend part also. And one more thing what you have is, when I say a server, is a server capable of doing multiple jobs? Yes or no? Now, when you go for an Amazon server, under your Amazon server, aren't you not doing the logging in? Yes. Aren't you not doing the concept of logout? Yes. Aren't you not doing the concept of adding an item to the cart? Yes. In the Amazon server, aren't you not working with searching the list of products? Yes. So when I say server, hell lot of jobs it is capable of doing. And every other job inside the server, it is all individual servers. You see, these all circles are individual jobs inside a server. You go with any of the server, every server is capable of doing multiple jobs. Every other job is independent to each other. Independent job. And when I say a job, what do you mean by job here? Again, set of instructions, server side coding, that's it. Okay, it is again set of instructions. You write some piece of code for doing some job, etc. Every job is set of instructions here. Now, every other job is being identified with something called as unique URL. Okay, there is something called as unique URL. You're going to observe the job. Why so? Because being a client, assume like this is login job. This is search job. Okay, a lot of jobs are there. Now, how do you invoke? Being a server, being a client guy, how do you say that, hey, search guy, please give me the results? How do you invoke that guy? So you have to invoke each and every job individually running inside the server through the unique URL. Now, if you ask me a question, who is assigning the unique URL? Backend guy. Who is developing this individual jobs? Backend guy. Who is capable of writing the piece of code within this jobs? Backend guy. Who is actually hitting the web service? Front-end guy, the client guy. So being a client guy, you are only responsible of hitting the web service and see whether that you're getting the response from the particular service at the server side or not. That's it. So this is what we call it as web services. So you would have heard about web service keyword many number of times within the stream or within this era. Anyway, like technically anyone talking, like they may talk about something web services. This is what simple concept is, guys. Web service is a piece of job which is getting executed at the server side, which is running independently. Lot of other servers are working along with, and every web service is being identified with a unique URL. When a client guy want to hit the get the data from the DB or anything, he can't get the data directly. Instead, he will put a request to this web service through the URL. That web service will invoke, it will go to the DB, get the data, and respond back to the client request. This is what we call it as web services. And if you clearly see the complete concept, the concept of putting a request from the client to the server through web service, which will internally indirectly work with DB and respond back with the user, this concept, we call it as AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So why the reason AJAX is coming? In order to receive the data to the UI side. Any questions, guys? Come on. I know this is a bit of confusion topic, but let me know if you have any questions here, guys.
Sir, where is the AJAX used? Means front end or back end?
You tell me. Here, why the reason? You tell me, guys. I mean, what is your observation?
Backend.
Backend.
No. His question is, where is web service is used? He's not saying where is web service is developed.
Yes, sir. Front end used, but communicate between front end and back end both, right?
Okay. Now you tell me here, I want this data. What we have done here? We have hard coded this data here, name, laptop, etc. I say that remove this. Now where you will receive the data from?
From the server.
From the server through
Database.
Through AJAX calls.
AJAX calls.
Through web service call, which is called as AJAX concept. So from the client side, you put a request to the server in order to receive the data. Actually, in order to get the data to the server guy, does the server guy need any AJAX call? No, because server is directly having a capability of interacting with the database. I can directly put a communication code to the database guy. I can receive the data. Why the reason front-end guy is depending upon the web service? Because he don't have an option of directly hitting the database. Indirectly, he is coming to the server. From server, he is receiving the data. Did you answer the question, Robin?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next. Okay, Hemant is
Sir,
having a
when we
question.
create client stubs and the server stubs, so on what basis we need to decide whether it should be the client stub and the server stub?
Okay, in most, okay, what do you mean by stub here, Farhan?
Not in this case. Actually, I came across, so I just want if any information on that.
When you say stubs, it is something called as a virtual components, which is also called as clustering components, we say. Okay, I don't want to discuss much on those topics right now to not to confuse here. But what is, because I mean, what normally happens is existing of the one thing in many virtual forms, we call it as stubs or we call it as clustering objects, which is physically not existing. But to increase the performance of the app, we are going to create those things. Okay, forget about those things. But now what I'm saying is, Very simple to understand this topic. First of all, client, I have this page. I want this data. That's it. I know that my JavaScript is capable of creating all the UI part and all, but I want this data. What is the name? What is the price, etc. and all. And these are, I don't want to hard code them. So I have this data on the database. Is it possible to get it to the UI? No. What is the option I have? I need to go to the server. Under the server, we are writing some web services, independent web services. Because when you say logout is never dependent on login. Login is never dependent on searching of the product. Searching of the product is never dependent upon the adding an item to the cart. These all are individual web services, individual jobs. When I say web service, it is a set of job. Now you write a piece of method capable of adding values. Same thing. When you do the same thing in your server side, that becomes a service. And when you want to invoke that service, you simply hit that URL. They will be assigning a URL to that. Hit the URL, you get the data. So creating of the web services is also part of our course, guys. When I actually come to the Node.js, I will show you how do you create web services. Once you hit a web service, how you receive the data, how the web service is internally interacting with the database. These all things we discuss when we actually go to the Node.js. Practically, we will see them. Physically, I will show you. But right now, conceptually, I'm just telling that this is the complete concept we have. Sorry, ma'am. I think, Farhan, you asked this question. Did I answer your question or?
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Yeah. Next. Any other question? Okay, one more thing. Hemant is having a question. So let's say if we know the IP of the database server and have the user ID and password, we can gain access without server. No, Hemant, that is what I said. Even though I have my local machine. Now, when I say that was client guy cannot hit the DB, implies there are no drivers actually. I'm not saying it is because of lack of ID and password also. Say, for example, you installed in your local machine with a MongoDB. Now from the client, I know the ID, I know the password, and it is a local machine. Still, you cannot access it. It is because of not having the driver. When I say driver, what do you mean by driver, guys? Can I say that driver means a software? Yes. Okay, practical example. You would have seen, I mean, nowadays it is not coming mostly, but I mean, sometimes it comes whenever you put on your earphones or whenever you put on speakers to your system, it will say that you need corresponding drivers are getting installed. Yes or no? Hemant?
Yes, sir.
Yes, right? So
Yes.
what do you mean by the drivers? It's again a software. Why the reason we need it? The drivers are actually like a mediators, because when I say a speaker, external speaker, system, these are two different systems, two different platforms, but I want to make them communicate each other. Whatever the sound output comes from my system, I want the speaker to understand. Whatever the speakers gives the input, I want my system to understand. That is why we install the drivers. Driver is like a mediator which can understand both the input from the speaker and input from the system. It will convert that system instructions to speaker understandable, speaker input into the system understandable. So that is what driver means. Now I go with something called as graphic card drivers. What is mean by this driver? This is again a software which acts as a mediator to make them communicated. Now when I say database, it's a complete software. Now can I make my Java guy to interact with the database? No, because Java is a complete different part, and the Java is a complete different technology, and database MongoDB SQL Server is a complete different technology. How can I make them these two communicate each other? Now I have to introduce one of the driver who can understand the Java instructions, who can convert the Java instructions to a database understandable. Whatever the response I get from the database, I will convert that back to this guy. But if you ask me a question, don't you see any type of driver who can understand JavaScript code and MongoDB? No, they haven't introduced any of these type of drivers because of the security issues. Because things always works on the browser is having less security. That is what people believe. And that is what happened. That is the reason there is no driver from where you can put a communication from JavaScript or client-side code to the so-and-so database. Did I answer your question, Hemant? You understood?
Yes, sir. But I have a doubt, sir, that you often see that some companies like IT companies get hacked. They access their databases and if we, I have a doubt, sir. If we have the access to the server, then can you get the access indirectly to the database?
Yes, he can do that, right? I mean, that's what I mean. When you have the hacking means completely different. Hacking means someone could able to put the instructions on behalf of you. That is what we call it a security hack. Okay. Now, say for example, someone got a hack on your network. When you have a network, in the network, I mean, through your wires or through network, data is being passed. Now, how he is doing? He could able to access the data. He could able to decrypt the data. Now he could able to see what is your ID and password. So that is where the lack of systems, what do you say, a lack of security of your coding. So we need to do something, or we need to implement complex encryption mechanisms so that even though someone receives the data from the packets, he cannot decrypt them. Now I receive something called ABCD XYZ, but I don't know what if I parse it, there is something output is not coming. So that is what your data is secure. So people can have a lot of gateways, a lot of the technology is there behind, but I can say simply there are some gateways are being introduced that people can't come into your network. But if they come into the network, they can still implement this concept of encryption and decryption mechanism so that whatever the data you have in your network, they will simply grab it. So we have to implement a lot of advanced security mechanisms to avoid that. Okay. Now, if you say that when they hack, can they access ID and password? Anything. Like once they hack it, they can access anything. And in fact, their interest is not into the ID and password. Even though you give ID and password, internally there is a security tokens will be created. So they could, if they could able to generate the tokens without your ID and password, they can simply get the data. Any other questions, Hemant?
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so hope everybody understood this concept, guys. Only concept I'm talking. How the UI is going to the server, how the server internally going to the DB, what is web service, what is unique URL. Is everyone clear? Any questions?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I understand you, sir.
Okay, nice. That's good. So, guys, tomorrow, make sure everybody is there. Practically, I'm going to show you the Ajax concept. How I hit a server URL. The first step, what we do is we will remove the hard coding data from this UI. We don't hard code the data from the JavaScript code. I will show you how do we hit a web service. How do you receive the data? The same data, how do you show on the page? That I'm going to discuss tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, sir.
We'll meet again back on tomorrow. Have a good day. Good night for all. Okay.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Good night all.